Hello, EggChasers. It's the EggChasers Rugby Podcast, the podcast about rugby that doesn't take itself or the game too seriously. Here in the Rugby Dungeon, once again, as we are, 52 weeks of the year, making sure you get your rugby fix. 52 weeks of the year, as we have been doing for nearly 10 years. And, you know, just remember that. Just when the World Cup draws nearer and other grassroots podcasters start crawling out of the woodwork saying how much they love rugby. And
isn't the World Cup great?
Isn't the World Cup great? Just remember, it's like...
No.
I will admit, being as the Wimbledon finals on as we record this video, and I watch tennis 2 weeks of the year. And I get into it for Wimbledon, and I don't care about it the rest of the year.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
But I wouldn't make a podcast about it.
Yeah, fair. Well, it's a very interesting point you make here, because I posed a question to my friends earlier on. Tennis is clearly compelling, right? It's clearly compelling. So why does no one watch it? Like, what can we learn from the fact that tennis is only big once a year? Or in fact, is that what we should learn? Is that rugby shouldn't try and be compelling for 52 weeks of the year. It should be compelling for 6 weeks of the year, and then shut up shop.
That's an interesting point, and it's the same as when you watch whether it's Ryder Cup or the Open Golf. There's something about watching, because for all intents and purposes, those shots are the same as you would see on any PGA Tour match in golf or any ATP Tour match in tennis. But the compelling nature comes from the context that game is operating in, when you know there's something serious on the line.
Or is it?
And you connect it to the history and all that.
So it's one of two things, I reckon. Maybe it's the quality of the production and how seriously the commentators are taking it. So do you know when you watch some, random tennis tournament in the middle of nowhere, like, it does feel like it's a random tennis tournament. There's no crowd there. The commentators are very blasé about it. Well, they're not blasé in Wimbledon. And you get that same feeling in like Six Nations. Like Six Nations, everyone's super serious. Or is it the fact that, it just needs to be an event?
And is it the fact that... Because I agree with that point that it's the event. Like, the event, like the Six Nations, like the World Cup, like Wimbledon, like the Masters, Augusta Masters, or anything of that magnitude, which there's only a handful in any sport, like the Super Bowl, or how much of it is you could make that much production, as you say, JB, around any event, and it's just the fact that this Wimbledon is accessible. It's on BBC. It's the headline on BBC iPlayer.
Yeah.
Whereas to go and watch tennis 3 months ago, you'd have to actively seek it out on the Sky Channel 508 or whatever it was.
Maybe. Yeah. I think there's more to it than just the occasion and stuff, because we've all seen, and keeping this in a rugby context, we've all seen clubs make an effort to create a razzmatazz around a game, and it just comes off as naff.
Well, yeah, it does. Although, can I just say, the commentary team, which really did a good job. Okay, there's 3 sports that have done a good job of this. NFL. Because I remember watching the NFL, and every game seems to be the biggest game in the history of the sports.
Can I guess someone else you were going to say?
Yes, you can.
Eddie and Steve on Rugby League.
Completely. You could buy that this is the biggest game. Like, Widnes Vikings against Salford City Reds was the biggest game in the universe at that time. There was no two ways about it.
On a Thursday night.
Thursday night football. Does it get any better than Thursday night football, Phil?
Thursday night at the Willows.
Yeah, in the jungle. But NRL actually does it. NRL does it really well, and maybe the answer is a sport can only be big in one plane. So it's either international for rugby or the league. It's either international for rugby league, which it's not, but that's where the NRL is. There is no equivalent international fixtures for the NFL. So maybe a sport can only be big in one plane. With football being the obvious exception. Football
is the obvious exception, because even though there's lots of die-hard football club supporters, particularly if you're one of the big 4 or big 6, however you slice it, who don't care about England fixtures. If you're a Liverpool fan or a United fan, you don't really care about England fixtures. No. But I've got friends who are Notts Forest fans, Leicester fans, Stoke fans, like lesser teams. They actually really do care about the England fixtures, because that's their shot at winning some silverware. And both are like the Champions League, the Premier League, or any major international tournament, Euros, World Cup. They are some of the most watched events on the planet every single year, every time that they occur.
That is true, actually. That is true. So football is the exception.
Football books the trend.
It's not even cricket. I mean, cricket, you watch the Ashes, and then if you're really into it, the IPL. But no one, I don't know any people fans that watch the IPL team.
So I actually started, because the IPL's over a really short window.
Yeah.
So I caught something earlier this year. It was like a preview of the IPL. And I was like, you know what, this year I'm going to try and watch a bit of the IPL.
Any good?
It wasn't... So I think I watched half a game.
Oh.
Because, and this is maybe a me thing or maybe a British broadcaster thing, it's just not as accessible to me. Like, obviously, our Twitter account is totally on rugby. So anytime there's rugby going on, you open up the EggChasers Twitter account on our feed that we see, and it's all talk. Like, everyone is talking about that game. Whereas I don't have the equivalent window into IPL, and it's not offered by the BBC. It's not like, I'm sure there are cricket websites that I could follow.
You almost need to set up a separate Twitter
account. Yeah.
Follow, so the algorithm can plug you into cricket. That's why I got rid of my Twitter account, because I was just plugged into rugby and I didn't want to watch any more.
Yeah. Well, I've kind of...
You could have unfollowed.
I did. I did.
Without nuking.
I unfollowed
the whole thing.
everybody, and I was still getting bloody Paul Williams tweets and whatnot. And then nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying that was the tweet that I was getting. That was what the algorithm was pushing towards me.
So the way that I've redone it this time, because I say every year, when I was a kid, I watched the Tour de France. Loved it. I used to watch it with my old man all the time, and for years I've been saying this year, because Tour de France is great because it's in the downtime of rugby.
Yeah.
So this year I was like, right, I am going to watch it. And the way that I did it was, for a few weeks before, on YouTube, I started searching for Tour de France highlights, racing highlights, and now the first thing that pops up now when I open YouTube every day at about 7-8 p.m.
Andrew Tate videos.
After I wade through all the Elon Musk and Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson videos, is Tour de France highlights from that day. So I am getting my Tour de France. So next year I'm going to start searching for IPL about a month before it.
Great, love it.
That's my routine. It's my routine.
There should be some shortcut function, like where you can just tell, like,
subscribe to
like
obviously
almost,
you can do that. You just subscribe to the tour.
That'd be actually a really good function, wouldn't it, for some sort of aggregator to say, I am interested in rugby or cricket or something.
I've suddenly got a passionate interest in this. Well, like tennis, 2 weeks of the year. I don't care for 50 weeks of the year.
There's some awesome cycling YouTube channels. Doesn't your mate do one?
Well, I know the guys that do the cycling podcast.
Yeah.
They started, they've just celebrated their 10th anniversary. And they started about 2 months before we did.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to cycling guys.
Yeah.
There is
the cycling pod.
On YouTube, there is, I think it's BCN. British
it's great, isn't it?
They have some some of them are a bit duds, but they have some great videos.
This is when I started realising. Do you remember, should we talk about rugby?
Let's do this, and then we'll get into the rugby.
I'll finish this last point, because it's nothing to do with anything, right? Do you remember the scandal some years ago about pink razors? So it's the pink tax.
Oh yeah, they cost more money. It's not fair. It's sexist.
Because we'll buy a blue razor.
Buy blue ones.
Okay, well, no one makes a big song and dance about the middle age tax, and you can see this everywhere where men are targeted for sale of things, and one of the things that they're targeted for is bike cogs, because only a middle aged man would buy bike cogs. Which, I mean, how do you improve on a bloody bike cog? Right? And it's like, how did you laser engineer the bike? Even if you did laser engineer the bike cog, how much better will it be than the last one? It's thousands of pounds are spent on running gear.
Bikes, it winds me up a little bit, because up to a certain point, and I've not got an expensive bike. My bike was 720 quid, so it's not expensive at all. In the range
not
of
by bike standards.
Not by bike standards. No. You could spend 20 times that on a bike comfortably. So my thing with bikes is, up to a certain point, you are getting more efficient. You are putting more power down on the road. You're losing less power as it translates. After that point, say, and it's probably somewhere around the $3,000 mark. After that point, all you are doing is getting lighter. So every component on your bike will be a couple of grams lighter.
And can I just point out, most of the people, right, that have got these bikes usually got them after receiving the proceeds of a large business sale, and they're not in great shape.
Well, this is my exact point. That if you're a middle-aged man in Lycra and you are riding a £10,000 bike, $7,500, say, or $7,000 of that £10,000 is just shaving off probably 3 kilograms. If you're 10 kilos overweight,
which a lot of them are. A lot of them are.
Yeah, that is the
Spend 10
equivalent.
grand. Spend 10 grand on liposuction.
That's a great.
Just get some gear, get in shape. Well, personal training, like however you want to do it.
That's probably not a bad thing to sell in cycle shops, like vouchers for liposuction. Because you're going to spend this amount of money anyway. You want to be good at cycling. Go do it, boys. Yeah, well done. We've solved two things: sports content aggregators, and liposuction for cyclists.
Perfect.
There we go. And we're giving you a rugby fix as well.
Yeah.
Eventually we will do.
Yeah, eventually. We'll get to that at some point. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Find more content. Some of it's spicy at patreon.com/EggChasers. Thank you for your support, keeping the lights on, and all the rest of it for, like I say, very nearly 10 years. And with the World Cup drawing ahead, it has added an extra spice and content to these Rugby Championship games and what will become the World Cup warm-up games. So how much of the Rugby Championship matches, round 2, did you see?
Pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
Bit patchy on the first half of Australia-Argentina because of swimming lessons and stuff, but seen...
I like Saturday morning matches.
I do as well.
I used to love it back in the days when I played and didn't have kids. This is all I would do: sit, have a brew, eat breakfast.
Bacon
my kids are old enough.
They're
now,
old enough.
Count down the minutes until I had to leave to go play for Broughton Park or Colwyn Bay. It's awesome.
Watching people like Christine Cullen in Super Rugby back in the day.
I still think those are glory days when the Brumbies were dominating everybody. Those were the glory days.
Eddie Jones's Brumbies. 20.
Yeah, it might have been actually
20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Just before he coached Australia in the World Cup.
So I was a little bit shaky on the details of the All Black South Africa game second half, but I've watched the Australia game in quite some detail now.
Well, let's start with that first game then, because, well, here's a question first off as well, because I was contemplating this myself over the weekend. Is New Zealand v South Africa the ultimate rugby rivalry? When you look at the rugby rivalries in world rugby, is that the top of the pyramid? I think it might be.
Currently it is. It's one of. It is one of. I would argue England-France.
Yeah, that's got history.
England-Wales is up there. Although Wales just aren't that higher quality of a team on a consistent basis historically. I mean, Wales have been absolutely abysmal for so long. And then they got good again. And they feel like they might be going into a bit of an abysmal phase now. I'm not sure they can pull themselves out of it. So that is a red-hot rivalry, but the quality isn't there. England-France is probably the one in the southern hemisphere.
Northern hemisphere, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, northern hemisphere.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and it probably is.
That's been a few World Cup semi-finals as well. I'm just thinking about, obviously, Grand Slam deciders, things like that for France, England, but it has been World Cup semi-finals.
I mean, you know the ultimate international rivalry.
Eddie Jones against himself?
No. Much bigger. Romania-Spain.
Oh, yeah.
The ultimate rivalry.
Now you're talking.
That is spicy.
Savage.
Yeah.
I think it probably is. So they're the only two teams who've won the World Cup 3 times.
Yeah.
And for most of, say, the last 20 years, they have been the two best teams on the biggest stage. Yeah. Not necessarily because South Africa had a period of God knows how many years prior to Rassie coming in where they declined in force and the All Blacks were amazing. But yeah, I think it probably is.
Thinking back about it, that South Africa decline is one of the most bizarre declines in rugby history because the players actually did exist.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a bad team. In fact, the very same players then went and dominated the world.
Well, in 2015, which was part of it, so they had coaching woes. They also, I seem to remember, over-relied on too many aging stars. They had an incredibly
It's such an interesting point to lead into this email we've had from Carl Brewster. Contact eggchasers@gmail.com. Fire your emails across if you have a thought. And Carl says, gents, pod, good, blah. This may be a very reactionary email, and it's and maybe too late 6 weeks out from a World Cup to change things up. But are South Africa too loyal to the 2019 winning team? In reality, the whole team could be very similar, bar the Beast having retired, which for a 4-year cycle is strange that there hasn't been more of a turnover of players. You look at today's performance, referring to yesterday's game against New Zealand, and the likes of Diolande, Faf, Lude, Lakanyo Am, Mapimpi. They aren't quite what they used to be I'm a Quinn season ticket holder, so my love for Andre knows no bounds.
Yes, I'm
but
sure.
surely he's the man to start now, and I've always thought Evan Roos is a beast, but Visa and Vermeulen seem to be picked above him.
Well, I mean, Vermeulen did start playing very, very well.
He played well last week, and he looked good off the bench.
Yeah, so, although I do agree that he's... I wonder if there's sort of pros and cons going on here. So, the pros for the South Africa team is they have this enormously deep squad. I mean, even though they lost this weekend, you would still want their wider pool of players over New Zealand, in my opinion. People might disagree with that, but I think they've got the strongest pool of players. And I think that's a product of having them in France, England, Japan, South Africa, and they've got no constraints, so they can pick them from anywhere. The downside of that is maybe they don't pay enough attention week in, week out to the performances, and those performances are very hard to compare and contrast, because how do you compare Faf playing in Japan to, you know, Hendrikse, or however you say his name, playing in the URC, or whoever the boy is playing in the Premiership? So I think it's quite difficult for them to pick. So maybe there is an element of going off past reputations and deeds in the South African team.
On the Phil made the point last week, going on where they play, and the relevance of that is, you did make the point rightly that Villy Leroux seems to not be affected by playing in Japan, but some of those players that were named, in fact several of those players that were named, are playing in Japan.
They are.
And I made that point last week when they hammered what is a poor Australia team, or was certainly last week and not amazing this week. But perhaps that point was proven wrong or inadequate this week, because guys like Lucano Am and Faf and Villy Leroux was okay, but he wasn't as good as he was last week. They're playing in Japan against this weird kind of mix of every team has 4 or 5 genuine stars and then a load of photocopier salesmen.
People like me.
People, Japanese chaps like yourself,
Yeah.
JB.
I wonder if I could get a game in Japan.
I would have thought so if you rocked up.
I'm pretty good with photocopiers.
I'm just looking at the team from 2019 compared to.
It's remarkably similar.
It is similar. It is very.
You could
similar.
have the identical pack.
So
except if Sia Khaleesi gets back fit.
Can you tell me the difference? Have you got it in front of you?
No. I'm just thinking you could it will be, depending on who starts in the front row and who's off the bench, but you would have Kitsoff, Malherbe and Marks, or Umbanambi. Diaga and Etzebeth.
Yeah.
As your locks. PSDT, Khaleesi and Vermeulen.
Yeah.
Whoa, you've missed the captain.
Khaleesi.
Oh, sorry, you did the same, sorry.
Yeah. Faf, yeah.
Pollard.
Yeah.
Deolande.
Yeah.
Am.
Yeah.
Mapimpi.
Yeah.
Colby.
Yeah.
Leroux.
Yeah.
You could have all 15.
Yeah.
So the only one of the 15 starters who was not in the matchday squad, I know there's 2, because 3. Andre Pollard's injured.
Injured, yeah, currently.
Sia Khaleesi injured.
Yeah.
And Beast has retired.
Oh, correct. Yeah.
Other than that,
did Tatawera, did he start?
Yes, he started.
Okay.
But
Kitsoff
was on the bench, so you'd like-for-like replacement there.
Remarkable, that, isn't it?
And you replace Sia Khaleesi with Franco Moster, who was on the bench, who comes in, and Vermeulen, he was on the bench this week, but he started the World Cup final.
The guys that are different from last year, Mostert and Visa, not great against New Zealand.
No, neither. Visa had a quiet game.
Yeah, he was dead.
He repeatedly stopped dead.
Did you notice the point where he dropped the ball and then he carried on running? I don't know why he bothered, but he carried on running and then someone just manhandled him. I loved it. I was like that. The other player, whoever it was, it might have been. I
think Ardy munched Etzebeth at one point.
Somebody did something right, and I thought that's unnecessary. Other than to let Visa know, I could have killed you. That was just a psychological.
Retallick put in a great hit on him. Shannon Frizzell put in a great hit on him. He got stopped dead by Cody Taylor. He had a hard day in the office. He really did. For someone who's used to having it all his own way.
But he's not that big, is he? So he has to be.
He's ferocious.
Yeah, he's so aggressive.
I imagine you
low
could
center
get on
of gravity.
if you let him get up a head of steam. much like, is it Colossus in X-Men? You've got a problem. But if you can hit him nice and early, it's a different proposition. He's not as big as, say, Vermaelen or someone like that, or Billy, who's just such a massive human. He can deal with you and then pick up a head of steam.
Yeah, I was impressed with the physicality of the All Blacks.
Absolutely.
Overall.
Well, I'll tell you an absolute statement bit of physicality, and you had a few of them, but Shannon Frizzell absolutely dispatching Willie LaRue was...
Lomu-esque, that was, wasn't it?
That was
he
awesome.
Played well.
He played really
well.
well. And he brings such a nice balance to that back row. Because when you've got Ardie at number 8...
And Ardie at 6.
It's Ardie at 6, Frizzell at... Sorry, Ardie at 8, Frizzell at 6.
No, they're the same person, mate. I am absolutely certain of that.
But Frizzell is a couple of inches bigger and...
Is he?
10 kilos heavier, probably.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Frizzell's like 6'4".
Is he really?
6'4", 6'5".
I said that was amazing because he plays in such a fluid manner.
So Ardie's like 105 kg. Ardie's not massive.
Frizzell looked Kano Collins-esque.
Whoa,
yesterday, didn't he?
easy.
I know
didn't know about that.
Big comparisons to make, but he played like that. He played in those wider channels.
He definitely did that.
Yeah, Shannon's 6'5".
6'5".
Whereas Ardie Surveyor
6'1", 6'2". With his
Probably-
hair. Depends
probably
if you count his hair or not.
6'2", 6'1.5".
There you go. I had no idea he was that big.
Yeah, so
It's
he's
'cause
3 inches taller and, according to this, only 6 kg heavier. But I think he might be more than that.
I don't know. He's very athletic with what he does with his size.
Yeah, you're
He
right
is.
about the balance, though, because I think Scott Barrett played very well.
Scott
but
Barrett had
the
a
automatic
great
choice was that he would be on the blind
Sam
side
Cane?
flank. So
Sam Cane had a great game,
Sam Cane was very good.
but Scott Barrett did have a great game.
He had a great game.
I read somewhere he put in the most, so he put in 3 dominant hits, which was the most of anyone, including an awesome one on Cheslin Colby, which was quality.
Someone, I think Exmouth absolutely annihilated someone.
He did.
Was it Mark Talea?
It was Talea early on.
Yeah.
First 5 minutes.
Havertz.
Yeah.
So I actually don't think this is as much of a disaster. Well, it is a disaster for the Springboks. I'll tell you why, but maybe not that much of a disaster. I think it's disastrous because what the All Blacks did successfully is force the Springboks into playing a different way. So the Springboks want to put you under loads of pressure, want to be holding the ball. They want to slowly build the pressure, and then you break. Well, if you score early doors against the Springboks, they've got to do something different. They've got to play in a way where they're chasing the game, and they're not built for that. They can't do it. So if you're going to beat the Springboks, this is the blueprint. I mean, obviously you want to score early and score often. I mean, that's that's quite obvious. But yeah, that's what you got to do. You've got to get scores on them and make them change the way they play.
I'd be interested to know what you guys think. But if I had to distill that game down to like a bare essence of what it was, obviously an amazing opening quarter, and to touch on what you've said, much like England against New Zealand in the World Cup semi-final in 2019, blow them away in the first 20 minutes, and then you've got the leeway to hang on. So there was that. But I would actually say probably even more than that, the essence of that win for New Zealand was a tactical kicking masterclass.
There was some amazing tactical kicking. And again, the range of kicking.
Yeah.
So one of the most unusual ones. So there's
the kick pass from Geordie.
The kick pass
backwards.
The short kick passes, the backward kick pass, the wide crossfield kick, like the try for what's his name?
Mwanga?
No, Will Jordan.
Will Jordan, yeah.
And the one that led to the try for Aaron Smith, those crossfield kicks. One of the most unusual ones was it was second phase, so it was a line out. New Zealand won a penalty in the first half, kick for the corner, won a line out on the 22. Second phase, so line out ruck. From that ruck, just outside the 22, Aaron Smith puts a box kick up onto
the 5 metre line.
Willie LaRue. Yeah, onto the 5 metre line. Now, it ended up being knocked on. I think it was Rico Ioane knocks it on. But New Zealand had 3 men underneath that box kick.
Yeah.
There was only Willie LaRue there. If one of them takes that, it's just try time. And that totally changes the way that South Africa, from the wide crossfield kicks to that, they have to defend in a totally different way. They don't know what's coming.
Well, Willie LaRue was a fine fullback, and his positioning is fine, and his playmaking is great. But actually, when you can deploy lads like Rico Ioane in your back line who is, I don't know, 6 foot,
He's
17 or something.
He's 6. So the two centres are 6'3" and 6'5".
Yeah, they're huge, right? They will. I mean, even if they don't win that aerial battle, do it 2 or 3 times, they'll win one of them.
Yeah. That was, but on the other point, so I think that's a really useful thing that they did, and the range of it. On the other point of changing the way that South Africa played, after 20 minutes, New Zealand were 17 points up after 20 minutes. 17 points up.
17 minutes
after 16 minutes.
Point
Yeah.
A minute for 17. Yeah,
it was. But after 20 minutes, South Africa got a very, very kickable penalty just outside the 22 and just to the left of the posts.
that's right.
Ordinarily, if South Africa get a kickable penalty after 20 minutes, they're taking the 3.
Yep.
They had to kick for the corner. They had no option after that point because they're 17 points down, and they missed it. They got 0 points from it. So they got no return. So they were. You're exactly right. They were forced to go against their game plan in many different ways.
I've got a question, right? How do you be honest enough with your team to implement what I'm about to say? Does anybody, or has anybody ever looked at their team and thought, right, we're going to make a game plan which involves us being down by 17 points after 17 minutes? I mean, it's likely if you're playing the All Blacks, but how do you explain that to your team that you don't think that you're going to be able to stop them scoring points? So what are we going to do when we're 17 points down for 17 minutes?
Just on a related, but a slightly different point, it must be a scenario that they run in training. I bet scenario is a massive part of.
I bet they never run 17 points. No, like 20 points down after 20 minutes.
You must discuss it with a captain, because the captain is the one that makes that decision. Right, do posts or corner? If we're more than 2 scores back very early on, what do we do? It should be it should be at least discussed with the captain. Because I actually, if I was South Africa there, I would actually want to take the 3. Yeah, just because I want to start the scoreboard ticking over, and that is their normal way of playing. Let's put it on another way. Do South Africa, with 60 minutes left on the clock, do they believe they can score more than 70 points? Yes, they do. In 60 minutes, they are 17 points. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, they believe they can score more than 17 points. Do they believe they can shut out the All Blacks? They should do. They should be confident enough to say.
Therefore, you take the 3.
So you should take the 3. You should revert to your normal position, not play on tilt. Yeah. But they were already playing on tilt.
So I think the conversation goes: if you told me, All Blacks could score early, what do we do? I don't think the conversation is, I don't think they even consider that. They'll say things like, well, we'll keep the ball off them, we'll kick more, or we'll apply pressure to them, and we'll defend harder. They never consider, I don't think at least, being 2 scores down, because to admit that is a kind of psychological defeat before you take the field.
Well, clearly maybe they didn't discuss it, because maybe it's something they should discuss, and maybe that'll be a lesson you take, because I think you're absolutely right, Phil. And I thought, particularly with where the penalty kick was in front of the posts.
Yeah, just to the left. It's definitely kickable.
Just
get those 3.
Get on the board and you're 2 scores down.
And reset and restart. Because you back yourself.
Yeah, because if you did claw those some or all of those points back, and then you were offered a penalty, you would take 3 points.
Yes.
Do you feel vindicated in your call that the All Blacks have got a pair of very proficient props? I think you probably should.
I think I was quite bold in my assertion. I think what I actually said was, by the end of this World Cup, they will be regarded in the same fashion as Kitshoff and Malherbe.
I thought they did very well. Very well.
Ethan de Groot and Lomax are both looking very good. And what's the guy's name?
The young lad, Williams.
Yeah, Tamaiti Williams. Yeah, big old unit.
He is a big old boy. A 22-year-old.
Yeah.
He's a big old boy coming off the bench. And Laulala is also not a small lad.
No.
So what score should this have been? Because I know 35 points is legitimate for New Zealand. South Africa got basically 2... Is it 2 tries late?
They got one, the Quagger-Smith try.
Yeah, Quagger-Smith is nothing.
That it was nothing. New Zealand, if that was under normal circumstances, they would have cleared their lines. They just, for some reason, were playing in their 22. The other 2 tries were legit. The Malcolm Marks try, which
Colby.
was driving maul, and the Colby maul.
What pass from Villy LaRue? And
do you know what I'm thinking? The Colby non-try. You know, when he breaks right at the end. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah.
The Colby try, I kind of wanted that to be disallowed. I think momentum rule is probably okay. It was the ball went forward, but whether they were travelling. but I kind of wanted it to be disallowed just to see the meltdown.
If a World Cup was being decided on that decision, that would have kicked off, wouldn't it?
Big time.
It's like Cueto in the corner.
Big time.
Tough on that.
07.
Although I do think... did you see Razzy's tweet today?
No,
but I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Well, it was perhaps what he should have done, a stance that he should have taken 2 years ago instead of throwing Nick Berry under the bus and accusing him of racism, which was... there's a tweet which said something about... It's like from a South African newspaper or magazine, rugby paper, that said to South African fans, what do you think of the referee's performance? What's his name?
Piper.
Not Piper.
No.
Mathieu
Reynal.
Reynal. What do you think of his performance? And Razzie quote tweeted it and said his performance was better than ours today, which I thought was
Agreed.
Absolutely spot on. I thought it was the right attitude for a coach to have. And I thought it was also an accurate assessment because I thought Reynal had a good game. He made some tough calls. He let the boys play. He wasn't too...
the rucks were loose.
But
he was consistent.
He was consistent on both sides.
Yeah.
There's maybe one or two of the scrum penalties that my totally untrained eye thought...
there was one which was an absolute farce. I can't remember if it was this game or the other one.
There was one in this that where... who was it? It was Kitsoff on the...
Was it right towards half time?
I think it was towards half time, where Kitsoff stays standing and his opposite man goes down flat out, and the penalty was given to New Zealand. And that one looked a bit odd to me. Now, there might have been some boring in or dropping a bind or something that I had no idea about, but other than that, I thought he was great.
Do you know one thing on the New Zealand coaching that is quite entertaining? You talk about Razzie Erasmus and whatnot, and it's interesting it'd be interesting to know the dynamics of the Nienaber and Razzie relationship. How much control does Jack Nienaber actually have? But on the New Zealand side, it's quite funny just hearing loads of people from New Zealand. They obviously had a really great win, and people are going, "Oh, it's great to see New Zealand playing well." Now they know Scott Robertson's coming in.
Oh,
and
awful people,
and crediting going. Oh, it's the forwards coach that's come in that's had a massive impact. Jason, can't remember his name is. Anyway, they've got a relatively new forwards coach. Or in the last couple of years, and he seems to have had an impact with the pack. But it's the desperation not to give Ian Foster any credit is real.
Wow.
Well, they've had a bad few years. Certainly by New Zealand standards.
Judge me on the World Cup, mate, as Eddie says.
Yeah. Well, just before we talk about that, I mean, has this changed any of your opinions about these two teams going to the World Cup? Which one would you rather not see?
I wouldn't like to see either of them.
I think it's more than likely to be a World Cup quarter final. There's a more than 50-50
So
chance.
which one would you like?
Hey, sweetie, what do you think of our new car from Carvana?
Think it can handle our busy family?
Well, we have 7 days to see. First, we can take the scenic route to the beach and stargaze through the moonroof. We'll see if your drums fit in the trunk. Then we can pick up Mommy's friends and check out that legroom. And we should really visit Grandma. She's getting up there.
That's like a whole lifetime in 7 days.
And like one busy family.
With our 7-day money-back guarantee, you can confidently shop for cars 100% online. Visit Carvana.com for all terms and conditions. We'll drive you happy at Carvana.
Oh, crikey. Oh, dear.
That's okay. That's all right.
So which one would you rather see, as an England fan, in this imaginary situation?
In a semi-final? Who would he rather see in a semi-final? New Zealand.
We're going to have to
I
see
think New Zealand would be better suited to England.
Yeah, but that's not to say that New Zealand are a worse team. Not at all. It's just in terms of matchups.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think there was the phrase "flat track bullies" came to mind watching this game with South Africa, which I think any team who it shows a hint of weakness up front, South Africa will exploit completely and run riot. They didn't find that against New Zealand, hence the scoreline. They will find that against England, and so I think once again they will probably, if England do meet South Africa, South Africa would beat them up in a knockout rugby game.
Yeah.
The problem with New Zealand is I think New Zealand can more than match England physically and can run rings around them outside as well.
I don't think England will be nearly ready for this World Cup.
No.
I just think it's...
Completely agree. Completely agree. Which is it's a shame, and I think it's a shame because they've got a great coach in Borthwick. Yeah. But I saw something, I think it was Rugby Inside Line on Twitter, did a poll recently about England fans' perception or confidence in Borthwick, and it's already dropped significantly in the 5 games that he has had in charge.
I think England cannot play well and arrive at a World Cup semi-final. That's
definitely.
With the way that we're gonna play Wales or Australia, maybe Fiji in a World Cup quarter-final if we get there.
Yeah, you would hope so.
I mean, the disaster would be Japan and Argentina going through from our pool, but
I mean that would really be a total disaster. I can't see it because Japan have been.
In terms of matchups, I can't see Japan ever beating England. Well,
no.
no. I mean, at this World Cup, I can't think of a scenario where Japan beat England.
Yeah.
However poor England are. It would have to be a couple of red cards.
I tend to agree. And Japan, they have had some amazing results in the last 2 World Cups, beating South Africa in 2015, beating Scotland and Ireland in 2019. Maybe it's just hubris, but I'm the same. I just can't see them. And I don't think, based on the results, because they got beat handily by a New Zealand 15 last weekend. I can't recall seeing the score against. They played Australia A, which was a handy Australia A team actually, with Taniela Tupou and a few others that I can't recall.
Harry Wilson, another one.
Yeah, the number 8 Harry Wilson, who's a handy player. I think actually was James O'Connor in that team?
Was he?
Did I see James O'Connor? Where on earth is James O'Connor playing at the moment?
James O'Connor?
Yeah. Is he? I'm sure James O'Connor was named in that.
Is he in all the Reds?
Don't know. I've not seen any Reds games this year.
No, I've not either.
Let me check those 2 things. I might be talking total nonsense.
We might as well jump over to
we best
the Australia-Argentina
it was Tonga. Sorry, it was Tonga versus Australia A, not Japan. And a Tonga. Wow. So Tonga beat Australia. There is a Jay O'Connor playing 12 for Australia A. Salakaya Lotto was playing. Taniela Tupou, Faianga, the hooker, Lachlan Swinton, Bernard Foley, James O'Connor.
So interestingly, shall we just get through this? Because you've got 20 minutes before Phil has a hard out.
I've got about 35 minutes.
35 minutes.
Well, just one thing. So this is actually worth looking at, because Australia A lost, a decent Australia A team, lost 27-21 to Tonga. The Tonga team is more interesting.
Yeah, Sir Charles looked great in that, the couple of bits I saw.
Sir Charles, Falau, Fekitoa, Peter Aki, Havili at 10, Takalua at 9, a pair of Fafitas, Tamifuna, Big Ben.
We watched in Malaga do bits.
Yeah.
On occasions he did bits.
Might need some slightly better conditioning. Steve Maffey coming off the bench. So that is a handy Tonga team beating a very handy Australia A team. So that is quite interesting.
So Australia.
Well, yeah, onto this. So,
have you done a video on Australia versus Argentina?
Yeah.
A reaction one?
Segueing from, and I didn't mention this on the video, but segueing from what you just talked about with Tonga, watching this Australia game against Argentina, just what a loss Israel Folau is to Australian rugby.
Wow,
my goodness me, what a loss he is. Because I know you're a big fan of Tom Wright, and I love him going forward. Great attacking player.
Oh, yeah.
He
did nice try. No. He's not the same quality of player.
No.
I love watching him.
I'm not pinning the result on him, by the way. I made a couple of bad errors.
I love Tom Wright in the same way I loved peak effectiveness Ryan Lamb. They're amazing players with their natural ability.
You love the way Miles Benjamin rucked.
Exactly right. But they're not the absolute peak of their profession, which is fair to say. But Tom Wright is an incredible player. He's not Israel Folau.
No.
Very, very few people. Israel Folau, in terms of his talent on a rugby field, is one of the best we've seen in the last 20 years. Yep. He's almost unparalleled in terms of his all-round talents.
But he did play for Tonga, yeah?
He did play for Tonga.
What a joke.
He was playing international rugby against Australia A.
Oh, how have they let that happen? So, this game. Well, why don't you tell us what your reaction was? Because you've already thought about it. You've already broadcast about it. So tell us your reaction.
My reaction was brilliant game, really entertaining. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater with either team. Both had deficiencies. Argentina just showed a lot of steel and guts to take the win. Australia, I think actually Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones compared his team to a Datsun 1200, which I'm not familiar with that particular model.
Is that an old, like, hatchback?
I don't know. Look up a Datsun 1200 and show JB a picture of what it is. But he said, mate, it's like a Datsun 1200, mate. You know, you fix the gearbox and then the next day the windscreen wipers don't work.
No, timely reminder, Eddie.
So he basically said that, you know, that the set piece was better this week, and then they made loads of errors last week. The set piece was bad last week, better this week, and then they started making loads of errors, and the set piece... there was loads of knock-ons, and there was out of positioning. So they've got a lot of things to fix up. I think they are capable of doing it. I just don't think in quite a few positions they are not at elite levels. It's the same with Argentina. Exactly the same with Argentina. They've got some brilliant players, but they've got some positions where they just aren't good enough.
So my question would be, my most fundamental question for Australia is, what on earth are you trying to do? Because I don't get it. I don't see what the plan is with this group of players. The group of players, to me, are fine. They've got so much talent. I mean, like, you look at people... Even though...
Do they, though?
Yeah, I think Ecktal's class. I think Karevi's class. I think,
Bobby V.
In certain
Bobby
positions...
V's very good.
I think that's the right point, though. In certain positions, they've got loads of talent. In other positions...
I mean, their second row are good for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
You've got a massive second row, a powerful back row. The front row isn't disastrous.
Flankers aren't up to scratch.
I don't know. Well,
Bobby V. Hoop's missing. McWright's okay.
Holloway was there this weekend.
Hooper,
last weekend it was Tom
Hooper. Yeah,
they're not up to it.
The 6 and 7 are a bit underpowered and washy.
Is the strategy up to it? Because we say they're not up to it. The only thing I felt that Australia did even remotely well is one thing, and I tweeted about it, so you probably know what I'm about to say.
Front row, they're not good enough either. Anyway, sorry.
Is they managed to stop Argentina on the gain line, and you look at Argentina's big ball carriers, they got manhandled. So Argentina couldn't do that. And what Argentina did marvellously well is they changed how they attacked. And rather than just try and run over people where they're getting no luck, they went a little bit wider, they started cutting their angles, they were very smart exploiting space. When, I can't remember which try it was, but one of the Australian defenders jumps out the line and they immediately exploit him. They were great. And you can look at what Argentina are doing and think that's an intelligent team with a plan, but maybe not quite as experienced or good players as Argentina, and they beat them. They beat them fair and square because Australia have no real guidance as to what they're doing.
I think so. Argentina, just quickly running through, I think they're a flanker short. Kremer will come back, so that will help.
Red card risk.
Yeah, I'm not sure Kremer's the answer.
Kremer and Lavanini on the pitch at the same time.
So I think they're
G'ing each other up.
No, you hit him.
They're short in the back row.
Double hit, bro.
They're short of depth. If anyone gets injured in the front five, scrum half is just not good enough.
I thought he was all right.
Centre, De La Fuente made an improvement coming back, but their other options are not good enough.
You don't like Cincy at 12?
Don't like him at 12.
I think he can do all right.
I didn't like him at 12 last week, and I was a bit more convinced, but still not convinced by him as a 13. He made a couple of breaks, but just don't think they're up to it. Australia, hooker, not up to it. Front row can be good on one game, hot and cold, but they just don't.
They
have
scrummaged quite well at times this week.
Well, yeah. Flanker, not good enough. Fly half, not good enough. Fullback, not good enough.
So I think
I tend to agree with that assessment.
I'm not. I mean, yes.
I mean, I could do the same with the England team.
They can definitely get better.
I'm not being.
There's a few teams you could do this on.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying that they are stellar in those positions. They couldn't improve. They absolutely could. The overall theme where they could improve is they need players that can make space out of nothing. I don't mean with skills. I mean like Will Skelton can just run over people. Lavanini got battered at the gain line, as did flanker Matera got absolutely battered. So that was a positive for Australia. Argentina should do better, but if they all play in the same way and they all buy into it, they're in a much better place than Australia are.
Oh, Argentina are.
Yeah.
They're a more set team, coaching wise and personnel wise. They've got more consistent personnel than Australia. The Australia team, the ins and outs in the Australia team over the last 5 years or so is crazy.
Including the coaching team.
Yeah, including the multiple coaching team that we've seen in the last 5 years. So yeah, I tend to agree. But Australia, they do have talent, wider talent.
They absolutely do.
It's whether they can bring it all and whether they have it in the requisite positions. Because you might have 8 world-class wingers, but you've only got 1 world-class flanker. That's a problem.
Mark Nwanganitoaze, he's a quality player.
Yeah, he was cool. And the replacement that came on,
Carter Gordon.
liked him. Really liked him.
He scored the last try last week.
I think he might end up starting 10.
Really?
Well, Quade Cooper, I just don't think...
Right.
Got it.
Answer me this, Tim. Right, you're a massive Owen Farrell fan, right?
Yeah.
So you understand the qualities of the England captain better than anyone, I would say.
Well, not better than anyone, but...
Than anyone. You're certainly his biggest fan, right? So
I'm founder member of the Faz fan club.
Exactly. How on earth, right, does this coach with a straight face say, Faz is my 10, I love everything he does, he epitomises what I want the team to be, and then you go and pick Quade Cooper? How does that work? Surely you say, Quade, thank you for your service. You're 35. I need someone who looks just anything like Owen Farrell. Just the same haircut.
But Bernard Foley's the closest.
Bernard Foley's not really.
No.
But I think it's...
Bernard Foley's a damn sight closer to Owen Farrell than Quade Cooper is.
I think there isn't anyone close to Owen Farrell. But also... It's a point that you make about, or you certainly made with Gatland in his previous reign as Wales coach. It's just he does the best with the players in front of him. So if he had someone like Owen Farrell, he might pick them. And he used Owen Farrell certainly at times very effectively to get to a World Cup final and win 19 games in a row. Less effectively at other times. But he doesn't have them, so he's got to do with the best at the tools at his disposal.
I simply do not believe that a guy like Eddie Jones, who was renowned for some wild picks, let's just go through the people who we never expected to see in England training camp, but did. Marcus Smith at 16, Gary Graham, Sam Moore. There's all...
Sam Moore was an odd one.
Yeah, picking... that's... unless you believe what I believe, which is they were completely politically motivated picks. But you don't believe that, so you must believe that they were there on merit.
I suppose the question is, what fly half's better that's available to him?
Well, this is it. He will know, right, what is in the Australian system better than anyone, because A, he's an Australian, most of the Australian players are available to him, he can see them, but this is the guy that played Gitto at age 17 before he played a club game, right? So he's not
totally different to Owen Farrell as well.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So it tells me that Australia must not have a single better player suited to what Eddie Jones wants than Quade Cooper, and that should be a huge worry.
Yeah, that is a bit...
Agreed.
I do agree with that. That is a bit of a red flag.
He has got... I think you pointed this out, and ever since, I can't see Quade Cooper without seeing how massive his hands are.
He's got huge hands.
They are enormous.
I have got huge hands, right? And his hands dwarfed mine. In fact, he might be the only person I've met with big hands than me. Huge hands.
That was fun in... that was in Kobe, wasn't it?
And do you know what was weird?
At Underground Bar.
Yeah, and do you know what was weird about seeing him then? I felt at that point his career was over.
Yeah. I
felt
4
he was
years ago.
Drinking his way. He's drinking his way through a World Cup.
He had moved to Japan.
Yeah.
He was not playing for Australia in his 30s because he'd moved to Japan.
The power's a strong zero to rejuvenate your life.
Zero.
That is another thing that where, in my mind, I might be totally wrong about this, but in my mind, Quade Cooper and Owen Farrell do diverge slightly. One of the reasons why I'm certain Eddie Jones loves Owen Farrell is because you talk to anyone in rugby or listen to them talk about Owen Farrell and they all say he is the hardest working, most competitive, drives the lads, best leader. And all those things I totally get from Owen Farrell. I know he trains hard as an individual. I'm not sure he's the best leader, drives the lads.
He's too talented, isn't he?
And maybe this is but he's just so different from Owen Farrell.
Maybe I've got a certain bias here. I do think that talented players don't work as hard. I just do. Because they don't need to. And I kind of put Quade Cooper in that category, but maybe that's completely unfair. Maybe he's a really hard worker.
Yeah, maybe there's a sliding scale. When you get to the absolute best of the best, they they work as hard as the person who. Well, it's who squeezes every bit of potential out of themselves, and the guys at the very top, and the guys who just make it to the bottom, probably.
Have you listened to Les Sneyd on Econ Talk?
Yes, I have. I cannot remember for the life of me what he was saying.
So he's GM at the Rams, LA Rams.
Les Sneyd, that's right. No, I haven't. Then no, I haven't.
So
it's that episode.
It's overall it's okay, but they talk about a really interesting principle, which is the one that you're touching on, and which is that balance of. I think they just divide it into like the tangibles and intangibles. Like the tangibles being. What can they bench? What's their 40-yard dash? What can they squat? Like, what are the physical attributes and the intangibles? How hard do they train? What's their leadership like? How dedicated are they? That side of things. I think you can probably have more categories, but for the purpose of this, that's all well and good. And they grade it like A, B, C, D for those two things, and saying that an A, if you've got the tangibles, the physical attributes, you can get away with being a C on the intangible, the C on the discipline and dedication because you are so high. And I think I would probably do it slightly differently. If you're just looking at those two characteristics, you'd probably say, if you ranked them, you can rank each one out of 50, and you need say 70 points to make it in the pros overall out of 100. So 70 points out of 100. So nice. 2 out of 50. Anything above 70, so you could be 50 out of 50 physically,
you need 30.
And then you'd be 20 out of 50 to get to the 70 overall. But if you're only a 20 physically, you've got to be 50.
Yeah.
And the point I was going to make was they mention, and I want to say it was Aaron Rodgers. They were talking about a player who they said is a star on both counts. He is 50 out of 50 in my world on both counts. And it was Aaron somebody.
Aaron Donald.
Does he play for the Rams?
Pretty sure he does.
The linebacker.
I think so.
Or defensive end. He's a defensive player anyway.
Yeah. Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald is defensive tackle for the LA Rams. And they're describing him as being that he has both. He has the 100% dedication and every single thing.
I kind of think the intangibles is basically faking it. In a way, in lots of ways, because you see a lot of NFL quarterbacks in the draft who are coached to say things in a certain way. Like, I'm a leader. They just say I'm a leader, and if they say I'm a leader enough, like, people stop believing that I lead this team, and it just sounds ridiculous. I think intangibles now are how well you talk to the press. For instance, I tell you who has incredible intangibles is Jude Bellingham. Have you ever heard him talk?
He's
an incredible
so young as well.
Yeah,
he really is unbelievably impressive. Like, all round.
Now, I think he could bluff his... I mean, he's an amazing footballer, I'm sure.
He might be 50-50 or A and A.
Like, if you take Jude Bellingham's attitude, particularly in football, it's so rare, and you've got that... You can articulate your position so well and walk into a change room and act like you've been there before with 35-year-old pros and whatnot. You'll be taken so much more seriously, even if you're not very good. And a lot of the NFL quarterbacks... Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow was the ultimate... intangibles guy. Intangibles off the chart. Couldn't throw a football. And he managed to start a game at quarterback and actually win some, which is remarkable.
Have you started watching the new Netflix quarterback series?
No, I don't watch it. I should do, but I've not watched it.
It's good.
For ages.
Yeah, because you could probably... I'm in my head, I'm scoring now Patrick Mahomes, who is like a physical specimen top, and he's got a reasonable score at the other stuff. Kirk Cousins, massive high score on the intangibles.
I can imagine.
And the physical stuff, not like middling, or even maybe middling to low, but he's top of the other. And the other one is Marcus Mariota, who is probably 3/4 of the way up physical, only a quarter of the way up on the other stuff. It's quite interesting.
Well, maybe this could be a reason that so many of the English players come from private schools, because that way to talk and that way to hold yourself and that confidence, like, it does make a huge difference.
Yeah, but equally, I think there's a bit of authenticity, because Ellis Genge doesn't pretend to be anything he's not, and he commands respect.
He is, yeah. I mean, you can do it the Ellis Genge way.
And Courtney Laws.
Absolutely. Mind you, it took Courtney Laws years to command that respect. I mean, no one thought of him as like a serious leader until, what, 25? And yet these are the kids coming out of school and they're going to the England under-20s, and they've been on bloody field trips to Iceland with Millfield and, got all these accolades. and they walk in like the finished product. So if you are interviewing a handful of guys, some guys are scared of their own shadow, and the other ones have, I don't know, been hunting polar bears for 3 weeks. Like, you go, yeah, I quite like that guy.
Yeah,
I'll bring him in.
I guess it's like Charlie Yules is someone who could,
Charlie,
like,
perfect.
talks incredibly well.
That's a great example.
Very articulate, affable, likeable guy, and people follow him for that. People follow Eddie Skens because he's a nasty, like, nice guy,
Hard as nails,
loyal teammate, but he is someone you want to go, yeah, I'm right behind you, mate.
On those intangibles as well, I think there's the corporate speak, the relationship with the press, the way that they act in that is the most common interface for us to see their intangibles.
Yeah.
That's only a very small layer of their
if
intangibles.
If we did that, guess who would be terrible?
Owen Farrell.
Owen Farrell would be awful. The worst player.
Probably the bigger. That's like the tip of the iceberg that we see.
Yeah.
But the reality is the hard yards you put in training, the dedication, the discipline.
It was Adam Carolla, who's someone that JB you introduced to back at the start of the podcast. In fact,
you had him on the podcast.
We had Adam Carolla on the podcast.
Do you not remember that?
Oh my god, yeah.
We interviewed Adam Carolla.
Oh my god.
Back
wow. Wow, he's like a podcasting giant. Behemoth. That's like the sort of Joe Rogan's in a league all of his own. And below that, Adam Carolla would be.
Adam Carolla used to have the biggest podcast in the world before Joe Rogan.
Anyway,
he's on ours.
Adam Carolla says you can draw a direct inverse graph between money earned and basically corporate speak, like knocking back, like saying nothing.
Yes.
The line: the more you earn, the less you say, because the bigger the risk of saying something that gets taken out of context, misconstrued, and all the rest of
That's
it.
That's why I do love seeing Elon Musk on Twitter, just because he just totally bucks that trend. He just ignores it. Because I guess he has enough money. He really does. He has money.
Well, talking of sports stars, one that's just lost, who's got a lot of money but does talk a lot, is Novak Djokovic.
Love that guy.
He just
love
lost.
that man.
Lost, unfortunately.
Has he?
Fifth set. Fair play to the young lad, but I love Novak.
Yeah.
Bloody hero.
Biggest sporting hero since Muhammad Ali, probably. That's where I'd place him. And he talks and says despite the risk, he says exactly what he thinks, and it's cost him money.
He did. He talked very vociferously about being a vegan for an extended period of time as well, and then gave that up when he was affecting his performance, didn't he?
Good for him.
Good for him.
Hey, when the facts change, so should your mind. What's on next week, rugby-wise?
It's a rest week in the Rugby Championship.
Mm-hmm.
Lazy so-and-sos.
Only just.
And then Eddie Jones said, if I was New Zealand, I'd watch out.
I've seen that. Yeah. I've seen that headline.
Oh, yeah. Watch out for what exactly?
Just like, I wonder what goes through Eddie's mind. The second he said that, do you think in his head he went, oh no, I've done it again? Or do you think he was like, I know what I'm going to say. I'm going to get everyone talking about me till the next game.
Does Eddie really? Do you think Eddie really believes in his plans? I think he does. That's the weird thing about Eddie. I really think he believes that he has the answers to rugby. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't.
He's never won the biggest prize, but he's
been involved.
Outside of the people that have, the few people that have, he's come closer than anybody.
Yeah.
He was not head coach, but he was involved in the South Africa 2007 setup, wasn't he? With Jake White.
He never wore the blazer.
Did he not?
Never, as a point of principle, he never wore the blazer.
So he was involved in that, but then he's took two. So he's been involved in 3 World Cup finals, 2 unsuccessfully as head coach, 1 successfully as I don't even know what his title was, senior coach, let's call him. Because it is a bit odd to be very successful with the Brumbies, then very successful with Australia, then step down to be an assistant for South Africa 4 years later, and then kind of go a bit everywhere. He was at Saracens, he was in Japan, he was God knows where else, and then went to Japan permanently for 2015.
Do you know who Eddie has a very strange relationship with?
Checker?
Nope. Someone in the Northwest.
Steve Diamond?
Who's worked for him.
In the Northwest?
When he's coming through the coaching ranks.
Oh, Alex Sanderson at
Alex
Saracens.
Sanderson. They've got a phenomenally strange relationship.
Interesting.
Now, have a look, and I recommend all of our listeners do this. Google Charlie Morgan's... is it an interview with Alex Sanderson, or is it... It's an article, basically, about Eddie Jones during his time at the Reds, and it was just a complete disaster. And the reason it's interesting is because Alex Sanderson was like a junior coach, like making his way through.
At the Reds?
Yeah. And
Wow.
worked at the Reds. And it documents, I think, the Reds' worst ever results in South Africa. It's just worth a read. It's just a really well-written, really interesting piece with two rugby characters who've gone on to do different things. And you can look at it in the context of their success now. So I'd recommend that because it's brilliant.
Very interesting.
Little callback. Datsun 1200.
Yeah.
I think it's the Australian name or certain Pacific name for a Nissan Sunny, like a 1980s Nissan Sunny. So that lovely beige saloon.
We all knew that, didn't we?
Is a Datsun 1200.
It's a cool
Do
car.
you know who collects Datsuns? Adam Carolla.
Really?
Yeah, fact. That's my cars.
I heard. Where did I hear this? That vintage cars, 80s. It's like 80s cars are the ones where the massive money is changing hands.
Oh, yes, I know,
Because the age that people are that have the money now to buy their car, that they go after the 1980s BMW.
Yeah, like a box fresh M3.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's worth a fortune, absolute fortune. Sierra Cosworth.
Whereas ones that are like
The Sierra Cosworth.
whereas sort of like 60s, 70s cars are, or 50s, 60s, 70s cars are not fashionable in the way that they were. So their value is dropping, and 80s, 90s cars
I don't
are
think they're
going up.
dropping. I think what will be happening is their value is rising slower. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so all classic cars, if you're into this sort of thing, basically go up in volume. So there is a section, and we need to stop the podcast now because we're talking about vintage cars. But there is a section in most motoring magazines about classic cars, about cars on the turn, where cars are starting to get more valuable when you sell them after you buy them. So remember, it's like Honda S2000s, they are getting more valuable. Lotus Elise is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, a guy I worked with bought what was about a 5-year-old Elise in 2007, something like that, and it's worth now about 3 or 4 times what he paid for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah,
Well, there you go.
And now, if you own a barn, Tim, do you own a barn?
That'll be people that were kids. That'll be people that were kids who wanted, like I wanted an old school Vespa when I was a kid.
Yep.
And so I bought myself a 1963 Vespa.
Are you aware of what the coolest cars from the 80s are? And this is the last thing I'll set on cars.
Coolest cars from the 80s. A Ford Escort Cabriolet.
No, look these up, right? That is cool, but look this up. It is all of the World Rally Class B cars.
Oh.
And it had to be banned because in the end it was too dangerous and two guys
What were you
fell
saying
off.
about barns? What were you saying about barns? People to keep car collections.
Yeah,
in.
you need a barn. Do you have a barn, Tim? You did have a barn until recently.
I have a
You
barn.
messed up here.
I have a couple of barns.
Do you have a barn? Fill it with classic cars. You will never ever regret it.
Oh, here we go. So I'm on the Group B, Rally Group B Wikipedia page. The first car is an Audi Sport Quattro S1E2. Lovely boxy thing.
Yeah, they're
beautiful.
gorgeous. They're absolutely
The
gorgeous.
second car is a Rothmans. Well, it's not actually. I was expecting to see a Lancia. Rothmans ProDrive Porsche 911 SCRS.
So this all got
with the
banned
livery.
when two guys basically drove off a mountain and burned to death.
The next two cars are. It's pretty incongruous that they're next to each other.
The Isle of Man still goes.
Yeah, but
people die every year in that.
Yeah, no, this you've got to
really do. Some of the videos on the Manx TT are nuts.
Go onto YouTube and just type in Rally Class B and just watch the highlights. It is like nothing you've seen. Like the crowd are parting like the Sea of Galilee as these cars are racing through, and eventually two guys drove off a mountain in Monte Carlo and died. And like, yeah, we've got to stop this, boys. This is getting nuts. But yeah, it's well worth a watch.
Wow.
Lancia 037 there.
Before we finish the pod and Phil has to go, quick mention of the under-20s Rugby Championship final. France are a serious team.
And
My
is that the last
goodness
3
me.
years that they've won it now?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been on for... The last one was 2019.
Okay.
But they won 2018, 2019, and they've now won...
I read a quote today from the Irish. I read it today. I don't know when the quote was from. Presumably after the final against France, and the Irish lad saying, "We've never faced a team like that."
Doesn't surprise me.
Really?
That French team is
serious. Their front five is unbelievable.
If that under-20s team were put into the World Cup proper, depending on which group they made,
they do all right.
Yeah. You could actually see them qualifying depending on which group they fell into.
Tell you what, next year is the year of top 14 for me.
You're going to get into it.
That is what I will be watching.
The whole of the French, there's just so many players in that French team. But Gazzotti, the number 8, is ace, and the scrum half, Junot. France, they're a bit short of scrum halves.
Yeah, they could do an extra one, couldn't they?
Do an extra one, but I think those are the two standouts. But just the front 5, just was it their tight head prop or was it the loose head prop? I can't remember which one it was, but it's absolute beast. And these kids are. Oh, and Poso Tuolangi is 18, 150 kgs.
Yeah, because he's got another 2 years of playing in that if he chooses to.
Which he won't, surely. He'll be in the Six Nations or something.
Yeah, potentially.
Who's he contracted to? Who's his club team?
Is it Perpignan?
It's Perpignan where his dad played.
Henry.
He can't stay there for long, can he? They're not top 4. They're Pro de Deux.
They were top 14 last year, weren't they? Did they get relegated?
I think they've been relegated.
I thought he helped them get promoted.
Or maybe they've gone back up. I do not know.
I thought that...
Next year I'll be an absolute expert on top 14, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. We are pretty weak at the moment. Let's just have a look. 2023...
Yeah, they finished second bottom in the... So they won the playoff to stay up.
I thought they were playing in it last year.
There we go. Right, let's bring it home. We've done rally cars, so I don't think there's much else to do.
So there were 2 other games next week that I did find... it's Fiji versus Tonga, which will actually be an interesting game if you can watch it. Although it does say of time to be determined, whatever that means.
That's professional, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is on the Tribe app, which it is generally better than Ultimate Rugby.
Much better than Ultimate Rugby.
But it's not 100% infallible. And Japan versus Samoa as well. So there you go.
Very good. Very good. Right. There you go. Thanks for listening. Let the boys play.
The boys play.
Perfect.